freaking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your recap episode for this week's Ryder Cup. And joining me to break it all down, DuCharme is here. Greg, you look good in red.
USA, baby. What a week for them. And I got to give all the credit in the world to the other guy here, Kyle Porter. What a prediction. I mean, he predicted the route, and I'm just not sure he had the courage to go all the way with it with 19 U.S. points.
He was way off. He had 17-11. He wasn't even close to this 19-9, the final score in favor of the United States. KP, I know we don't have you for a lot of time. You are on site there at Whistling Straits. Give us an idea of what the heck is going on.
To be fair, I've been predicting U.S. blowouts for the last 8 years, so I don't know how much credit I deserve for. We were talking to this is a horrible name drop off the top, but we were talking to Seth Waugh on Saturday, CEO of the PGA of America, and we were joking with him that we always predict U.S. blowouts, and he compared it to a broken clock. You know, you get one right every 20 years. So I appreciated that. Listen, it felt like so Friday. I haven't talked to you guys. Friday was flat. First tee, no juice, nothing. It was weird, and especially coming off Hazeltine, and so many. It picked up as the week went on, and so many things happened at this event that Friday morning feels like it was 6 weeks ago. I mean, it's insane. I was telling Shane Bacon this a couple of minutes ago. It's insane how you talk about this and talk about it and talk about it for 6 months, and then it all happens in not even three total days, just these 50 hours of actual time, and you talk about it again next 2 years. It's so crazy how it happens. The U.S. needs to work on its celebration. They're so bad at celebrating. Nobody's chanting, nobody's cheering. They're kind of spraying champagne on each other, but not really. It's so awkward. But the pressers were unbelievable. I mean, just to be in there for that was worth the entire trip. So there's a million things we could talk about. I was sitting there right there when Rory broke down on 16. There's just so many different directions we could go. But it does, sitting in that press conference afterward, it felt like a new era. I know everybody keeps saying that. I said it before the event. It felt like, hey, Tiger and Phil are gone. Because that was the old era. You had other guys, but it was Tiger and Phil. And this is different. And we're not all going to be besties. We're not all going to get along all the time. But these are our guys for the next 8, 10, 12 years going into the future. And that's exciting, I think, as a U.S. golf fan.
Well, let's start there because Greg and I, we're going to go through all the matches. We're going to do that fun stuff. We're going to let you get out of here before we do that. So, Kyle, let me just bounce this right back to you here because I think we at least thought the Europeans. It kind of felt like a last dance situation, right? They're bringing back Poulter. They're bringing back Westwood. They're kind of this older team, and maybe this is a last dance. But the United States, it's a passing of the torch moment. They described how good the locker room was, how different it was than previous years. It does feel like we are turning the page, a very bright future for the United States, and a lot of questions on the European side.
Yeah, so two things. One, I've been yelling about how Europe is going to get hung up between generations, and that's what we saw this week. Westy just had nothing. Poulter, I mean, he's a great Ryder Cupper, but he had nothing. Fitzpatrick is not part of that generation, but you see some of that. Paul Casey didn't play that great, or he didn't score any points. You see so many of their older guys. It's just that's it. That's it for Poulter. That's probably it for Westwood. Westwood was emotional in the press conference afterwards. I don't know if you guys saw it, but he was crying about this being his last one. This event it's the best. It's unbelievable how. I mean, these guys are millionaires, famous superstars of their sport. And they're weeping at these press conferences on the course. Rory is falling apart, and it's incredible. I mean, this event is just incredible. That's an aside, but the European thing, I don't know what the succession plan is. I think we might have talked about that in the podcast leading up to this event, you've got Hovland and Rom as your young guys, and what else do you have? Maybe you've got a Danny Willett and a Thomas Peters and Matthew Fitzpatrick at the answer. They've always been able to identify really young, great Ryder Cuppers like Sergio, like Justin Rose, and kind of bring them on board. And I don't know who those guys are beyond Victor Hovland. I think Tiger and Phil not being here is meaningful. Obviously, they're great players. They're unbelievable, all-time 10 guys of all time. But what happens in a team room and at a team event, they're almost like black holes where they just suck everything in their orbit like into them, and it doesn't allow you to kind of breathe and everybody feel like an equivalent part of the team. That's not even really their fault. Maybe it's been their fault in the past, but even if they weren't trying to do that, it just happens. That's just natural. And so I think it's not coincidental. The first Ryder Cup they were at or that they were not at over the last 30 years is one that really feels like this generational shift into a new era for U.S. golf.
19-9. The United States did not lose a single session, Greg. They tied one. They did not lose a single session. You, I think, joked about maybe Europe having to create a task force moving forward. I'm not sure if that was a joke. What is the next step for the European side here? I mean, I agree with Kyle. They're in this kind of awkward spot with their best players in the world, and they're going to have a side of Americans that are going to be formidable for a very long time.
Take a look down the official World Golf Rankings and just look at the flags, and you'll see some international flags. You'll see some European flags. There's a lot of American flags, and you got to scroll when you do find the European flags. They're older players, and in just 2 years, they're going to be 2 years older. And that's the problem. There's not a lot of youth. There's not a lot of rising stars in the European game. Certainly not enough to compete with what the Americans have coming up in the ranks. The one name I might have thrown in there that Kyle didn't would be Bobby McIntyre. And if you're judging Padraig Harrington, maybe he's the guy that should have been on there. But then again, hindsight's 2020. You're trying to win this Ryder Cup. So I understand where he was coming from. But if you knew that this would be the result, maybe you take a Poulter, and he's probably the only guy. And it's nothing against him because his Ryder Cup record is phenomenal, especially in singles. But there's not a lot of other guys that you could kind of groom past a Robert McIntyre. So I think that's a real question. It's a real concern. And Thomas Peters, who Kyle mentioned, what a letdown. I mean, he was he was supposed to be the next guy, and his game just hasn't materialized. And you don't see him on this board here for a reason. So the guys you see here that have Alex Noren, maybe he's a guy you can get one or two more out of him. But I look at the Europeans who couldn't be on the next Ryder Cup team. And Guido, maybe Guido could be a guy.
Guido, you could go with Guido Migliozzi. Victor Perez, the Højgaard brothers. That's like the younger set, or I don't even know if they're even brothers. No, they are brothers.
Are those guys the answer?
That's
right. That's the question. Problem. Can you lean on him? Like, you look at names, and you could lean on Matt Fitzpatrick because he's young, but he hasn't won a point. He hasn't won a half point. He hasn't done anything in the Ryder Cup, and I mean that's not necessarily forever. No pop. And it's certainly not the Rose. It's not the Rose Stenson duo, right? Duo rather. You're not going to get that out of these guys. So, I mean, maybe there are some options for them, but they have a lot of work to do to compete with what we have.
The American rookies. Sorry, go ahead, KP.
Just real quick, I'd like to say, like, I don't put Sergio in that group. Sergio is, first of all, he's a monster. I mean, he's unreal. And him and Rom together. I mean, Sergio's going to play in another Ryder Cup. He hasn't played in his last one, but I don't know, man. Poulter, Westwood, Stenson, maybe Rose, maybe all four of those guys have played in their last Ryder Cup. I think,
and even if they haven't, what's their significance when they do play in their last? It's the Lee Westwood version this year, right? It's a ceremonial, maybe the final Ryder Cup, and that's not what's going to beat our team.
I think Padraig. I think this is the point. Is he didn't see having enough good young options that he was going to leave Poulter off the team, and we saw how Poulter played. I mean, that's an indictment of your future, right? That's not a good sign for your future. And I think Harrington was kind of like, well, maybe we can capture some magic one more time. And that's the part that I'm talking about of getting hung up between generations. We need to talk about the U.S. team before I have to go, though.
Yeah, let's talk about it. The Americans, the rookies went 14-4-3. Justin Wright says that's the highest points per match average of a group of rookies in the modern era. But it was more than just the rookies. KP, the oldest guy on the team, goes out, plays all 5, wins all 5. I mean, this was just an absolute drubbing. It was the depth that just never ever stopped for the Americans, and they proved that they were just absolutely much better than the European team was this week.
Yeah, I mean it was unbelievable. You didn't get a ton out of JTSP. Everybody kind of played this role, and they rode DJ, their horse. And I think here's what's interesting about DJ. You know, he said this in his presser. He was drunk, but he said he kind of credited his partners, and he was kind of joking but kind of serious. And listen, playing with Colin Morikawa and Xander Schauffele is a lot different than playing with Matt Kuchar and Ryan Moore or whoever he was paired up with in the past. Like that is that's significant, right? Like that's a big jump. I don't know if you guys saw, I tweeted out this morning kind of the how under par everybody was this week.
I did see that. It's great.
It didn't tell the full story because you pick up your ball sometime in match play and you can't, those numbers don't get counted in, but it gives a good picture. Rahm's at the top, Morikawa was second, and DJ was third. And so I think, yes, DJ went 5-0, but he got a lot of help from Xander, from Morikawa. And I thought they really I thought they kind of set everything up really well. They didn't try to, I don't know. It was great. And it showed their depth. You know, I thought coming into the week that the point of having depth is to ride your really hot players. And I guess they kind of did that with DJ. I probably would have rode Morikawa more than they did. I guess he played 4 times. They played their best guys the most, and they got a bunch out of like Finau and Bryson playing their kind of role on the team. I mean, we were joking about it today. Like, what are you thinking when Bryson and Finau are coming in for the afternoon matches after you've won another one 3-1 in the morning? And you get, I mean, just up and down the board, Cantlay and Xander. I mean, it's there's no holes. Scotty Scheffler, your hole, he goes out and hammers Rahm on Sunday. I mean, it's truly scary. And I think the last thing I'll say about this is all those guys worship Stricker as a captain. I mean, they were going out of their way to talk about how well he set everything up. There were no surprises. Everybody knew who was playing with who. This is our deal. I don't know if they changed. I don't think they changed anything around during the week, which sometimes maybe I think you should to ride that hot hand. Maybe DJ wasn't supposed to play all 5, and he was just playing so well that they rode him. But they went out of their way to praise just how good of a job that he did throughout this week.
The Captain Stricker, Greg, has already kind of poured cold water on him doing this again. In the post-event interview, he kind of alluded to, hey, there's a schedule. There are guys in line. I've been very successful. I'm stoked about it. I'm thrilled. But, like, in short, don't expect to see me as captain again is kind of the vibe that I got.
I think that's a little disappointing. And not that it's Stricker alone, but I have a belief that really successful organizations in anything have consistency. And there's no place I'd rather start than with a captain. It doesn't have to be Stricker, doesn't have to be anybody. And look, with the European team shaping up the way that it is, maybe this will all be maybe the tide will turn for the U.S. over a long period of time, and this won't really be an issue. But I do believe that a real changing point you could make that would be really successful would be to run a captain out multiple times in a row. The Europeans did it back in the day on a couple of occasions and found success because there's consistency and there's regularity. And like Kyle just pointed out, there were no surprises for anybody. If you have the same captain who runs things the same way for 3-4 Ryder Cups in a row, I know that's a long period of time, but if you can do that, you're going to be hard to beat, and everybody's going to feel comfortable, and everybody's going to know who to impress, and there will be no surprises going forward. And it makes it hard to question the moves that he makes. So you start to believe in him. Whereas in 2014, the moves Tom Watson made, there wasn't any trust built in there. You know that the Ryder Cup captain was a great player, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they make great decisions as a captain. And when you have a chance to have a guy like Steve Stricker, who's had success at Liberty National and the President's Cup and here, if you roll that out again, the guys on the next team will know that, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. Both captaincies have been wild successes. And for that reason, I trust what he's doing, and I'm not going to question it. And that cuts down drama, and it makes everybody comfortable and everybody happy, and ultimately leads to success.
1911 was the final score under Captain Stricker at the 2017 President's Cup. 19-9 here at Whistling Straits. So KP, is it just overthinking it to not just run him back out there one more time? Like, what are we doing here? Why are we moving away from this?
Well, I think yes. I mean, those guys adore him. Like they would. I mean, DJ was like going out of his way. Again, he was drunk, but he was.
By the way, we know Dustin Johnson's drunk tell because it's in a presser when he's like trying to get into more questions instead of doing like the speed racer 6.5 minute press conference that he usually does.
It's a great point.
And both are amazing, to be fair.
Yeah.
But he like was interrupting people to talk about how awesome Steve Stricker was. When does that ever? I mean, again, drinking, but when does that ever happen? You know, and. I had a point about this. Oh, I think the problem here is I don't know if Stricker wants to do it.
That's
right?
A good call.
It's so taxing. Solly and I at No I Know were talking about this. It's so taxing to be the captain for. I guess he was kind of the captain for like a 3-year lead in to this year, but for another 2 years, you're just. I think there's a lot that goes on that's just kind of a hassle more than anything. And not even like picking the team and all that stuff, but the media obligations and all the just extracurriculars that go with it that I just don't know if guys want to commit to that for another couple of years.
Yeah, it's tough. It is. How much time you got, KP?
I got one more question in me.
All right, let's just do this. The presser afterwards ended with Brooks and Bryson hugging it out in the middle of the room to a standing ovation from their teammates. Are we done with the Brooks and Bryson thing? I'll tell you what, Bryson was pretty. I think he's built up a lot of goodwill this week. I don't know how long that lasts, but like, where do we now currently stand on the Brooks and Bryson stuff?
Well, thankfully, Bryson's super self-aware, so he'll be able to leverage all that goodwill for his own benefit for the next.
Until I see him on Tuesday at the long drive.
Yes, exactly. That's how long it's going to last. I think that's the end of it. I'm so tired of talking about it. JT called for that. You probably watched it, but JT was like, "Hey, hug it out." Listen, like, are those guys buddies? No. Like, do I think Bryson and Daniel Berger are boys? No. But there's enough, like, it's kind of like the New England Patriots thing where, hey, we can take on an Antonio Brown because we've got enough Tom Brady's that it works, right? That's why you have Spieth. Well, I mean, you have Spieth and JT and Morikawa because they're world-class players, but they also provide you that benefit that you can absorb some of the guys that are just kind of, doing their own deal because you have enough of this other type of guy. So that was kind of, the way they all talked about each other. I had multiple guys, including I think Koepka, talk about how they grew up playing together, and they all know each other really well. And I know I keep stating this, it's so different than the Tiger Phil stuff. Again, not that was necessarily bad. This is just like, it feels fresh, and it's easy to like each other when you win, but it definitely, I think Scotty Scheffler and JT and Cantlay and Spieth and Schauffele, I think they all like enjoy being around one another, and they enjoy being on a team together. And that really came out this week. Also, will you ask me really quick about the Rory thing? Because I was standing right there when it happened.
Yeah, so Rory McIlroy, emotional to say the least after his round, describing how meaningful the Ryder Cup is to him, how he wished he brought more this week. He finally got a point in Sunday singles, beating Xander Schauffele, but all in all, a disappointing week for Rory McIlroy by his own standards. Yeah,
so he was so bad the first couple of days, and just kind of low energy, just didn't have it. I don't know why. And then he was so high energy throughout his match against Xander. Like, he was locked in. It was Ryder Cup Rory. And then obviously he wins it on 16. I was hoping he'd miss that putt on 15 because we were standing on 16, and I wanted to kind of see his match. And he comes off, and I'm standing probably, 30 feet away. And I'm on Twitter, and I see people tweeting about how he's crying, and I wasn't close enough to see, like, there's a bunch of people around him doing TV. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. So I walk over there, and he's just like, I mean, you guys saw it. He's just losing it. And it was kind of like, there's such an energy around, hey, the U.S. is about to win. They might get to 20. And then all of a sudden you're hit with this tidal wave of, like, existential Rory talking about, like, his career. I mean, he's the guy that in 2009 was like, it's an exhibition, right? And now he's, like, leaping over this week with good friends that all these guys talk about, that you get to remember forever. And everybody around there was getting emotional, and it was like this huge thing. And he's talking about Shane Lowry being one of his best friends for so long. Lowry's in the group behind him. He finishes. Rory goes up and hugs him. They're both crying. And I'm like, what are we doing here? It was such a meaningful moment. And, you know, his wife was there, and they're, like, crying together. And it just, and I'll end with this. It solidified this as, like, the best event. And I was actually just texting with him about, like, that moment and about this event. And we were just talking about how, like, it surpasses everything else in golf, because it's not about how much money you won or how many trophies you have. It's just about playing golf with guys that are your close friends and guys that you want to go out and win an event with. And I don't know, man, it was sweet. It was super meaningful, and it made me appreciate the fact that we get to cover this every single week, and especially that we get to cover this week at the Ryder Cup.
That's Kyle Porter. You can find him on Twitter at Kyle Porter CBS. KP, thanks for popping on. Safe travels, brother.
Thanks, guys. Sorry I couldn't stay on longer, but yeah, loved it, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
See ya.
Great
Thanks.
stuff, KP.
Okay, Greg and I, we are going to go match by match. We're going to talk through this, give our thoughts and analysis, but first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. All right, Greg, it's time. Let's go. Let's go match by match. We went a little out of order here, but we got a window. We went with it for KP being on site. So let's go. Match number 1 out. Rory McIlroy does get the job done over Xander Schauffele, 3-2. We talked a little bit about that, but I was still interested to see Padraig Harrington on Sunday, knowing he needs points immediately. Right now goes back to Rory in match number 1, not Jon Rahm in that slot.
I would love to know how that came to be. After sitting him on Saturday morning, and then Saturday afternoon doesn't go well either. And it's like, what is going on here? And you're going to play him first. It didn't make any sense. So I didn't understand the move, but at the same time, there's this lingering feeling that Rory's not going to go Owen anything.
Right.
And that is why I thought he had a chance to actually go 0-5 this week if it didn't go well. And I say that because I thought that Padraig would play him every match. I don't think you can sit him down with this team behind him. Anyway, he got the job done, and it was cool to see. And it's definitely one of the more memorable moments of the European Ryder Cup, of the Ryder Cup in general. And part of that, Rick, it's easy to look like a great team when you win. But what the Europeans proved today, and Rory was the centerpiece of that, what you do when when you lose is really what makes a team. And it was really cool to see.
Yeah, I thought sitting Rory was a little bit of waving a white flag and then rolling him out first was kind of trying to jolt him. I didn't understand it. He gets the job done. He wins 3-2. On the other side of this match, that was the only match Xander Schauffele lost. He was, again, phenomenal. He continues to be one of the best consistent players we have in our game across different formats, whether it's stroke play, whether it's no cuts, whether it's the Olympics, whether it's team formats. Xander Schauffele, newsflash, very, very good at golf.
Yes, I was disappointed with the putt on one. That's the one thing I'd say about Xander. It was
missed a little shorty and gave Rory the first hole there. That's what you're referring to. Yeah,
exactly. And he should have made that one. And if he makes that, it's a long road. It felt like that could be a momentum shifter almost. I mean, it was just too much in the end. But Xander, very impressive. Had a real chance to be, I won't say Captain America, but Mr. America for the year with a gold medal win, going 4-0 in the Ryder Cup. But still, 3-1 is a really nice feat. And also, he is a clear piece of our future, a really solid, a workhorse type piece for our future.
Yeah, absolutely. Match number 2, Patrick Cantlay beats Shane Lowry 4-2. Lowry gets first blood, winning the second hole, but Cantlay rattles off the next 4 and never lets Lowry get close after that. This was, I thought, at least kind of an interesting play from Padraig Harrington. So in my opinion, here's what they do. You hide Jon Rahm in the 3 spot, right? Because the Americans say, okay, it's got to be Rahm and Rory 1 and 2. That's what the Americans must be thinking. They counter with Xander and Cantlay. So Padraig Harrington says, okay, let me try to hide Rahm in the 3 spot and get like emotional guy who closed out great at the end of Saturday's matches. Shane Lowry, maybe I can catch, lightning in a bottle with him in the 2 slot. I actually thought that was a pretty solid move.
I liked Lowry in the 2 slot. I was almost, it's hard to say they're going to go weaker, but going with Xander Cantlay 1-2 was a strong move by Stricker because they're a tough match for anybody.
No hope for the Europeans, right? If they go out and they get a couple of early points, Steve Stricker wanted to squash all hope.
But even if you lose those, they're extremely talented, a match for anybody, but not necessarily the guys that everybody's leaning on. We need Cantlay, we need Xander. No, we'd like them, and they're great and they can do it, but they're not necessarily Dustin Johnson. If they go down, Olympus has fallen kind of a thing, to cite a movie reference. It wasn't like, so it was a smart play and a solid play. I also think Lowry in the 2 hole was a solid play because he's just coming off that emotional victory in the Saturday afternoon 4-ball play. So I really liked that play. You don't have a lot of horses, but Lowry was clearly emotional. It meant a lot to him, and you could see it. But Cantlay was just too much. He was game face, and really, I mean, what an impressive week for him.
Cantlay gets 3.5 points on the week, and he shares top rookie honors with Colin Morikawa. Now, the evolution of Patrick Cantlay seems to have significantly increased in speed over the last couple of months, Greg. We have seen him not only come out of his shell more so in terms of interviews, but he has become a really unstoppable force on the golf course. Is this what we can expect from Cantlay? I mean, he's going to get to Shriners seemingly in 2 weeks. Is he just going to pick up right where he left off and roll this into next season?
Yes. And this is the thing about this. He's developing and growing as a player, but this is really who he is. This is what he did in the amateur ranks. And it was a couple of injuries and a couple of bad situations and that held him back for a while. I mean, the guy didn't play golf for a whole year. And here he is, one of the best players in the world and another workhorse player on our team who now has won I mean, he's basically won every year. I think every year except one since he's been back out on tour regularly, full time. And he's won big events and he's beat big time guys and he has won in the play. I mean, he's done everything at this point aside from majors. And he also really came out of his shell at the President's Cup at Royal Melbourne. Remember, you saw these reactions out of Cantlay that were surprising. So I think in a way it almost hurt him that this Ryder Cup was pushed back, because he could have, if 2020 didn't happen the way it did, how about that for a line? But if 2020 went differently and he had a Ryder Cup the next year, this all might have been a little more, it would have made a little more sense. But there's that year off with no team golf, and you forget what he did at Royal Melbourne, which was just like this. So it was no surprise, but I do think this is what we can expect. I'm not sure about the interviews. I'm not sure about the personality when he gets into the heat of a PGA Tour season, and it's just about focusing on Cantlay's game. But he is definitely a guy who's kind of a butterfly, right? Opening up, coming out of his shell, and it's fun to watch.
Match 3, Scotty Scheffler wins 4-3 over Jon Rahm. Scotty Scheffler goes out, birdies the first 4 holes, wins them all against the number 1 player in the world. And in the post-round presser, a lot of the American team was referencing this match. This was what they were keeping an eye on. This is what they were using as fuel to see Scotty Scheffler up on Jon Rahm early and big, and he's able to hold on. He's able to close it out in somewhat significant fashion here and kind of down the European's best player.
I actually thought this was going to be the first match. Yesterday, we talked about it last night, Rick. I thought this would be match 1. It happened to be match 3. And the coolest thing about this is it's easy to say Jon Rahm is gassed. I mean, he has had the whole team on his back. He has played, this now being his 5th match, and he always has the target on his back when he plays. And he has been the one in a team competition. He's had no break. He's the guy that has to, he's like the LeBron James. He's got to play defense on every play. He's got to play offense. He's playing point guard on every play. He is running the show for the Europeans. And it's easy to fall back on that and say, well, yeah, he got a tired Jon Rahm. But he birdies the first 4 holes. And you step up in that moment that everybody talks about where you can barely get your ball on a tee and you're playing Jon Rahm. And you go out there and birdie the first 4 holes. That's some stuff. I don't know what you call it. I'm not sure there's a name for it. I won't try to come up with it, but that is big time golf and a career defining moment potentially for Scotty Scheffler.
Jon Rahm with 3.5 points still is your top European. That was 3.5 to 1 before the event started. Match number 4, Bryson DeChambeau defeats Sergio Garcia 3-2. So if you're paying attention, that means the Europeans went McIlroy, Lowry, Rahm, Sergio. That starts to make a lot of sense. And the big moment from this match, Greg, it's going to come right out of the gate. Bryson DeChambeau drives the green on number 1, proceeds to roll in the eagle putt. He would win number 2. I mean, it was right out of the gate, Bryson asserting himself onto Sergio, who's also had an excellent week.
Phenomenal week for Sergio. And he answered the question without question. That was the right captain selection. And it kind of, right, it buys him another, in my opinion. I'm not sure it matters going forward, but the game that Sergio still possesses is incredible. But Bryson really stepped up. Quite frankly, he was impressive. He's a guy that in team play in his last President's Cup and his last Ryder Cup was very disappointing, I guess you could say. But this is a new Bryson, and it was very new in 2019 with all of his distance. It was completely new, and so he didn't play a lot. But this time, he became somebody you could lean on, which was really cool to watch. Maybe would have been cool to see him play in foursomes play for Bryson's future, just to see what he is in team play and what kind of role he'll play in the future. Is he a 5-match guy guaranteed? We don't know that yet. I don't know how he's going to do an alternate shot, but he stepped up and he hit big shots when he needed to. He hit some great wedge shots. We know about his driving the green on 1 was, I mean, it was just so cool. And he flew it on the green and it landed like a wedge. It was so cool. And then everybody got behind him, and he had a great attitude about the whole week. And it was a big week for Bryson. He may be the winner of the week. He may leave the happiest guy out of anybody on this U.S. team.
Yeah, he's on the winning team. He gets 2.5 points, and he did a little help for the image this week, I think. So we'll see how long.
Yeah.
I thought he was great. I thought he was phenomenal. It was awesome. Sergio got 3 points, which makes him, along with Xander Schauffele, they are going to both notch top wild card. So Xander was 4.5 to 1. Sergio was 8 to 1. But since they tied, you can cut those in half. Match number 5, we got it. Colin Morikawa against Victor Hovland, and only fitting, Greg, they have. So they each get a half a point. Morikawa won 17 with just an absolute beauty into that long par 3. Hovland snagged one by winning 18 to get the half a point for Europe. It is just, I know it's been 3 years, but to call both of these guys rookies, to see where they're at this point in their career, and then to get them to battle on Sunday at a Ryder Cup was like, I loved everything about this match.
It all happened so fast. You think about the press conference at the Travelers in 2019. I mean, it's happened really quick. And I kept seeing moments with Hovland and Morikawa both, looking at them and just saying, in 25 years, we're going to be looking back at these pictures, say, wow, they were so young. And I can't wait to watch the progression and the journey along the way. But Colin Morikawa, extremely impressive to me. And he showed that this is not a short-term thing, his success, because he goes through these little lulls, and this one was because of an injury. He's gone through some putting lulls, and he comes back so easily and so gracefully. And it's not like when Jordan first came out and everything was just a whirlwind and it was crazy success right away. He's had some real struggles, and it'd been easy. It would be easy to doubt him, but he's never doubted himself. And he continues to come back and ride the ebbs and flows with just a great attitude. And it screams to me long-term success. Hovland, much of the same, but as far as the Ryder Cup goes, Rick, I didn't see the magic, right? The thing that the European contingent could always do was make the big putts, even for guys that aren't great putters.
Correct.
And I didn't see that out of Hovland this week.
Yeah, you nailed it for me. So Hovland is an incredibly interesting case study for this Ryder Cup. He played all 5 sessions, Greg. He earned a half a point. It was that one right there, that half a point against Morikawa. And you can look at this and say, and I'm pretty sure, I'd have to look this up, but I'm pretty sure he was in the lead on the back 9 of all 5 of his matches, and he got a half a point. I'll confirm that here. But to me, when I tuned in and I saw Hovland, he passed the eye test from tee to green, and he just made nothing. And that's what you're referring to, is that there was never that Ryder Cup magic where even the poor putters find a way to put the ball in the cup.
I mean, look at the statistics from this year and where the European players rank in strokes gained putting. That is not the same. It's no different than it is in a normal Ryder Cup. I mean, the Ian Poulter is usually a pretty good putter, but not as good as he is this year. Then you go to a Sergio Garcia, a Justin Rose, Henrik Stenson. These guys tend to struggle on the greens. European players, as a general rule, struggle on the greens on the PGA Tour until the Ryder Cup, and then they become the Jordan Spieths and the Patrick Reeds. They become the greatest putters of all time in Ryder Cups. And Hovland was just the opposite. Hovland was the putter he is on tour in a week where he's not winning. And he brought that to the Ryder Cup. Maybe that's the team atmosphere. Maybe his partners weren't holding anything, and there wasn't that energy that we've seen at Ryder Cups. And I'm not saying it's going to last forever, but I don't look at him and say, oh, he's the next Henrik Stenson. He's the next blank on this team after this Ryder Cup. And it's, my opinion will probably change through time. And if they contend again, I guess I just don't see him as the sole savior of this team. I see him as a piece, and he needs help, as everybody does, except like a John Rahm. You need a little bit of help. You need some sparks from your teammates, and I'm not sure where it comes from on the European side.
So I confirmed this. His last 4 matches, he had a lead on the back 9. Got a half a point out of those. 2 things before I forget here. I forget the one. So that's a good start. The other one was, okay, you know what my biggest pet peeve is? The cup clinching point. And the fact that that's an actual designation, because let me walk you through the day, Greg. Morikawa stuffs one on 17 and makes the putt, and he is now 1 up going to 18. He is guaranteed a half a point. However, in the meantime, in the time it takes him to play 18, there were a couple other players. I think Dustin Johnson had a crack at a putt to clinch the cup. I think Justin Thomas had a putt to clinch the cup. Even though it has already been clinched, it's just not on the board yet, where we almost had a situation, and I was dying for this situation of Hovland to make a par putt or a birdie putt or whatever it was, a birdie putt on 18 for the cup clinching moment for the other team. That's what it would have been, because the match just would have ended.
You're right. And it almost happened. But even Brooks Koepka had a chance. I mean, if his the shot he hit on 17, if that went in, he was the cup clincher, which would have been cool to clinch it on a hole in one.
Oh my God. It sniffed it. It looked in and rolled by.
Yeah. Because the history tells a different story than what actually happened. And if that was the moment in history, the cup clinching cup, Brooks Koepka won it on a hole in one, we would have forgotten that it was already clinched by Morikawa. But Rick, I had the same thought. Morikawa clinched it. It's already done. This shouldn't be still a conversation, because the have is guaranteed. And they said that on the broadcast, but I mean, it all worked out. The ball don't lie, as they say.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Okay, here we go. Match number 6. Dustin Johnson beats Paul Casey 1 up. Casey hold out from 108 yards or whatever it was on Saturday, and that was about it. He was not good all week long. Dustin Johnson 5-0 becomes the first American to do that since Larry Nelson in 1979, and he is the 5th man to ever do it. Most recently, before DJ, 2018 Francesco Molinari. Unbelievable week from Dustin Johnson to. We talked about it all week long. When you play 4 matches and then you go to singles, it's not a great conversion rate in that match. And he was just vintage DJ for 3 straight days.
Yes, he absolutely was. And poor Paul Casey, because Paul Casey goes 0-4 and all of his losses to Dustin Johnson. So I felt for him. I felt for him. Because I don't think Paul Casey played terrible golf. There wasn't the spark again. And he's not the guy that's going to create that. He's the guy that can ride on that. And he can utilize that as fuel and be a part of it. But he's not the creator of it, unfortunately. Dustin Johnson was the hot guy they decided to ride. And the beauty of this American team is they didn't have to. I look at DJ going 5-0, and it's a big deal. And it was huge. But the underlying story to me is, if Dustin Johnson wasn't on this team, the outcome would likely not have been that much different.
Yeah.
And because we just have another guy to roll out. And okay, Xander Schauffele could be the horse. Patrick Cantlay could be the horse. We could ride Justin Thomas. We have so many options. It just doesn't stop, which is cool. But for Dustin, who's had a shaky Ryder Cup record, I think 7-9 coming into this week, changes the story completely in one Ryder Cup. And all of a sudden he goes from a disappointing Ryder Cup record to a really good Ryder Cup record. And he deserves that, because his whole career has been outstanding, incredible, and also underappreciated. Yes. And it's going to be marked by what could have been, almost no matter what happens, because there's been so many close calls and so many tough decisions. But he has been the best player and the most consistent player since the post Tiger era, the real Tiger era, since 2010. He's been the best player. And so I'm really happy for DJ.
Dustin Johnson, top American, which obviously he was. He won every single point, 7.5 to 1. Top combined point score also gets that 12 to 1 were the odds coming into the event there for Mr. DJ. Match 7. Brooks Koepka beats Bernd Wiesberger 2-1. It was pretty close for a while. I think they stepped on 15. No, I guess they stepped on 16 tee all square. Brooks wins 16. We have mentioned that he nearly made an ace on 17 and has enough in the end to pull it out over Bernd Wiesberger, which he was quite a sizable favorite in.
It was big for Koepka to get this win, I think. It would have looked like a really disappointing week without this point. And especially if it comes to Bernd Wiesberger, who's the guy that everybody throws out there for the European team as their weakest guy. And he wasn't. He was actually pretty good.
He was pretty good, but he got 0 points. But he got 0. I mean,
right.
There were 3 guys who got 0 points, but he was, I'll tell you what, when I watched Bernd, he was pretty darn good.
He was
big time putts. Yeah, I was impressed.
And that's what I'm looking at the points in the Ryder Cup are important. And over the longer you have, the longer stretch you have, the more likely it is that the points pan out to the way you play. But when you have one Ryder Cup and your team gets waxed and you don't know what's going on with your partners, and it doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. I thought Bernd was good, and maybe part of that is we throw the Scott Stallings out there as the generic PGA Tour player. Bernd Wiesberger is the guy. Well, who are you going to throw out there? Bernd Wiesberger? Like he's their European, just the name you throw out there. And it's not worthy. He was worthy of a spot on this team. So I'm impressed. But the Koepka thing to me, I thought Kyle made such a good point before he left. Talking about how you have enough Tom Brady's on the team to absorb an Antonio Brown. And it became, for Brooks Koepka this week, from what I'm seeing, it became cool to be a good guy. Right? It became cool to get along. And all of a sudden he bought in and he broke down a little bit and he had some fun and he enjoyed it. And it looked genuinely fun for him, which was nice to see. You didn't see the eye rolling. You didn't see he wasn't the energy sucker that I feared he would be, which was cool.
And even like, I think he appears to be really good friends with Daniel Berger, or at least like whatever boys or whatever. And just to see him even joke around with him, I thought was cool, right? Because it always feels like it's Brooks against the world, or at least that's what he wants it to be. But it's actually nice. Like, remove Bryson from the situation. It was nice to see him joke around with Berger.
Yeah, I totally agree. And he bought into the whole team atmosphere. And so I was kind of struck by this whole thing where you have what Rory said in 2009. You've had Tiger has made comments in the past and his opinion completely changed. We saw it in 2019 with how emotional his player captaincy was. You see Brooks Koepka go from his comments, who knows when that was, probably a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. He makes those comments about the Ryder Cup. And this event has that way of changing you. It changes your opinion of it because you learn to love it and appreciate it. And it's emotional, even for the alligator skinned Brooks Koepka. It's emotional and it gets to everybody. So I think that was really cool to see.
Me too. Match 8. Ian Poulter finally made some putts, finally looked like Ryder Cup Ian Poulter wins 3-2 over Tony Finau. What is the likelihood, Greg, that this was Ian Poulter's last Ryder Cup?
Strong. Moderate to severe. 1 point.
Yeah. One point this week. He's on the wrong side of whatever age he is. And he's especially maybe one more crack if he gets a really generous setup and plays well before we get to Rome. But like on an American hosted Ryder Cup, it's going to be tough. I think this might be it for Ian.
So he's 45, I believe. So 47 at the next one in Europe. I still think he has a chance, but what's the significance of that? Is he going to be able to carry a team? I do think it's an advantage to go play a European setup
for sure.
Right.
And he is 45. You are correct.
So he'll be 47 at the next one. I do think there's a chance he can make that team. I think he can make the team top 9. He's still a good player and he cares about it so deeply, and he can find courses to play, and he can get his way onto that team. What's the significance of that? That's a different story.
I'm not going to count him out. And he is now 7-0 all time in Ryder Cup singles, which is just absolutely bonkers. I don't know if you've looked this up or if you know this off the top of your head, because I feel like perception and reality is a little bit different. Any idea how many points Tony Finau had this week?
One.
I would have definitely bet over 1, because I felt like when I watched him, he was playing well. He had some good vibes. I'm a little surprised it was only 1. He played 4 times.
The thing was, on Friday afternoon, he only played 4-ball play. He didn't play foursomes, which hurts your opportunity, obviously. So he goes crazy in Friday afternoon, and he's fist pumping and celebrating. So he's going nuts. And it's like Tony Finau, this could be his Ryder Cup. This could be the Tony Finau story. It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And then they lose the really difficult match. They lose on 18 to
Lowry. So I was wrong. So I thought he played 4 times. He played 3 times. It was him and Harris English beating Rory McIlroy and Shane Lowry. So that was the noisy one that we all remember. And then he was on the wrong side of Saturday afternoon. Lowry making the putt on 18 to win that. So that's not as bad. And then Sunday singles, he loses to Ian Poulter, who's never lost. So, okay. It's way better when you break it down like that.
Yeah. But it's tough to judge that record. Oh, he only got 1 point. But at the same, and I kind of feel the same way about his singles win in 18, where he plays Tommy Fleetwood, who's gone 4 matches, and it's a beatdown, but it's insignificant. And this one is Ian Poulter continues his singles record, but it's insignificant. It's a match that doesn't matter. And it's just hard to put the same weight on that as you do on Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm. Although I'll also say the singles matches in this Ryder Cup were all as a whole far less significant. So you take it with a grain of salt. It was still, I think, overall a positive week for Finau.
Justin Thomas in match 9 wins 4-3 over Terrell Hatton. Hatton had about a 9-hole stretch this week that was really, really good. Outside of that, I did not think he played particularly well. Still love the guy, still love the emotion. I think he's going to play more of these, and he's going to be a lot of fun moving forward. But for a United States team that relies on Justin Thomas to be their emotional leader, him going out and getting 2.5 points, 2-1 and 1, that's like the baseline performance for JT, right? You go out and get 2.5 points every Ryder Cup, and it's going to be just fine.
You're absolutely right. And the other thing about JT is you're usually in the marquee matches.
Yes.
And so you're going to draw some buzzsaws. And that's the other thing about Ryder Cup records you got to take with a slight grain of salt is these guys, the matchups you can get can be so different. But they're not all created equal, even though it seems that way. But the cool thing about JT's match was birdie in the first 2 holes. It just sets the tone early, and you just get the feeling. You take the energy away from Hatton, and the energy is in JT and in the crowd, and he's just giving them the stare down, and they love interacting with him. He's the spark plug, and he did exactly what he had to do.
Match 10. Harris English falls to Lee Westwood. Lee Westwood wins 1 up. In fact, Lee Westwood won 15, 16, and 18 to earn that full point. And even in basically his own words after the event in the post-event presser, likely the final point for Lee Westwood. He's 49 years old. I believe he had his son on the bag this week, which was to me that is a golfer who is on a farewell tour.
Yes. And that feels like it's going to start cycling through the European team with Poulter. He may get a farewell tour at home, on home soil, as they say. And you may get that with a Casey and a Garcia. Eventually you'll get that farewell tour. For Lee, it was really cool to end the way that he did.
Yeah.
I did think that English was our weakest player this week, which is so surprising to hear, because he certainly belonged on the team, but he was our weakest player.
Yeah, he was, which is crazy. It just shows you how deep the Americans are. He went 1-2. He absolutely should have been on the team, but you're absolutely right. He was the weakest player.
What a great sign it is when Harris English is your weak spot. That's your weak link. wow. I mean,
It's
but
crazy.
it was insignificant again. I mean, he lost the tough one to Lowry, which would have been big, but they took it to 18. He and Finau took it to 18. And this match today is insignificant, and you know it when you go out there. So I don't put too much into this match, but it definitely two of the weaker players in this Ryder Cup, but it created a really cool moment for Lee Westwood.
And by the time that Lee Westwood won 15, 16, and 18, the Ryder Cup was decided. And I'm not sure how much Harris English was, or any of these guys still out on the golf course were all that excited about finishing their match.
Yeah, I mean, you almost want to just go in. You almost want to go in and celebrate. So, but you can't do that. But it's that's what you want to do. That's where your mind is, no question.
Match 11, Jordan Spieth and Tommy Fleetwood fight for a half a point. They have this match. Spieth, I think Spieth was grinding. Spieth is a grinder constantly, right? Like every single week on the PGA Tour, no matter if he's outside the cut line trying to get in, he grinds. And he was grinding because he was looking for that first full point, Greg. He was looking for that first full singles point. Still has not won a singles match in either the Ryder Cup or the President's Cup, which is just crazy to think about. But he will continue to be a staple on this American squad, likely for a very long time.
Yes, and this wasn't his best Ryder Cup, but like you said, he's a staple, and he's so easy to pair, and he's so important to have on the team, and you can lean on him when you need to, but we didn't have to, which is nice. If you have a Jordan Spieth who you can, he can kind of take it easy. Not that he did, because he does grind every time, but you're not leaning on the Jordan Spieth point. That's such a big advantage. And the Americans enjoyed that all week. So Spieth just couldn't quite get it going with the putter on the greens. It was kind of ridiculous at times. He had one of the nastiest lip outs I've ever seen, and a couple of good putts he hit that didn't go in. But there was a lid on the hole for him all week, and that's why it wasn't the week I expected to have out of him. But it was close.
Final match number 12. DB straight vibing. Daniel Berger wins one up, including the final hole to get that full point, which ends up being the record-breaking point to get to 19 points over Matt Fitzpatrick, who, man, between here and Paris is what now 0 for 5 in 2 Ryder Cups. It's tough. He's going to have to wait 2 years and hopefully get back on this team and try to get himself a point.
I feel for him. I mean, I'd like, obviously, for all the Europeans to have losing records because I want the U.S. to win. But I don't want anybody. It's just tough because he's going to be on the team. He's going to take questions about it. And you go 0 for in your first Ryder Cup and it's only 0 for 2 and it's no big deal. But now you come in and you're kind of expected to take on a new role on the team, and you're one of the young guys and a name that people are going to throw in there as somebody to lean on, and yet you're 0-5. So disappointing and tough. Great for Berger, though. Great for Berger to get the win here because he could be looked at as not a great week with a loss. 1 and 2, not a great week, but I think this will help his case going forward on next teams. It helps him be a part of the group to have a winning record for the week.
19-9. When you add it all up, that's the final score. The margin, which if you were looking around, like our friends at Caesars, they offered an option for 7 or more, would have fallen into that category, would have been 4-1. The exact score, Greg, if you went out and pulled the trigger on 19-9, it would have got you 28-1 on your money. It was certainly one of the longer shot outcomes, but this was an American team that was significantly better and deeper than the European team, and also you get a couple of things to go right, and it ends up being 19-9. It was never, ever close.
No, it should have been worse, quite frankly.
It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah. I don't look at this and say the Europeans let matches get away. I think the Americans still let matches get away. Yeah. And so this could have been real ugly. I mean, really ugly. And it was really ugly. But yeah, 19-9, record breaker. Great to see. The future is looking bright for the Americans. I can't wait to see what this team does with this kind of unity in a road game. Can't wait.
Yes, that will be yes. I love that. Well, Rome is where they're headed next in 2023. So obviously we'll start talking about that probably in like 2 weeks.
When in Rome.
When in Rome. Okay, well now we've got to refocus our attention, Greg, because you know what's coming up next week? The Sanderson Farms. Yeah, baby, let's go.
Great trophy. Another great trophy week.
Elite
One of your
trophy.
favorites, right?
Absolute elite trophy, top 3 or 4. Jacob.
Yeah, I got a question. So we sort of brought this up last week. When does Sanderson Farms Week officially begin? Was it whenever we knew that Morikawa and Hovland were going to have, or was it whenever there was the clinching point, or was it whenever they actually hoisted it? Because that's all I was thinking about.
So I think it was 6. I think is when it was 6-2 on Friday. We could
it could have been on Friday.
But realistically for me, it was when Morikawa, it wasn't officially the clinching point, but like when he guaranteed it, right? It's over. It's Sanderson Farms, baby. Sergio Garcia, defending champ.
I have a slightly different spin on this one, which, by the way, I think is a great question, Jacob. So thank you for your input. But the Sanderson Farms Week starts, to me, at our DFS episode tomorrow. I still think it's Ryder Cup week. That's
if you were a true PGA Tour nut, it would have started after Max Homa won at the Fortinet, because you would not even have recognized this Ryder Cup as an event.
That is funny.
So Max Homa kicked us off on Sanderson Farms Week. And
is that the most forgotten win of the year already?
It has to be. I feel so bad. Why? Because you do one event to start the season, then the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, it's a stutter. It's a stutter start.
Yeah, and immediately the second that putt dropped, everyone wanted to talk about the Ryder Cup. Even though it was Max Homa, incredibly popular, likable guy, friend of the pod, everyone wanted to talk about the Ryder Cup, and now we're just going to move on. So yeah, I actually kind of feel bad for her.
Yeah, it's like last year before the November Masters, Carlos Ortiz won, and Dustin Johnson came in second, coming off of COVID. So it was completely, and then it's Masters week, and it's completely forgotten about. So Max Homa's in that camp too, but hopefully there's another win for him in the near future.
You could have given me a million guesses on who won that event before the Masters, and I never would have got to Carlos Ortiz. So next week, DFS preview Monday, Sanderson Farms mega preview pod Tuesday, which spoiler alert, we'll have to figure out a recording time. I'll text you guys about that. I'll be at the long drive. Bryson's going to be at the long drive.
Nice.
I have no idea. What is he going to do? Is he going to, he's not going to be good at this, right?
He's going to hit it far. No, I've never been to a long drive. I think what you're going to be surprised to see from what I've heard from people who have gone is the shots are like the foul balls, the misses are almost just as exciting to see as the ones that hit the green. So I can't wait to hear your report on that, because apparently they just go way off the map. So I think you'll find Bryson to be the most accurate driver there.
That I believe, and that I will report back on. But I'm very, very excited. I think that'll do it for now. Producer Jacob does all the hard work behind the scenes. That right there, it's Greg DuCharme. You can find him on Twitter at @TheRealGFD. You can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut, and we'll catch you next time.